Welcome to the show. Got a good one here for you. We are talking the top 5 wide receivers for fantasy football. Can you believe it? 2025. We don't stop here on the number one fantasy football podcast. Going to give you a list here. Now, I don't really want to go from 1 to 5, 5 to 1. I want to give you guys that could actually finish as a top 5 receiver. So practical stuff. Example, last year, right? I was the one telling you don't draft Tyreek Hill round 1. Go running back. I was telling you to avoid a lot of the wide receivers in the first round because there's so many good running backs that you get in the early rounds that you're not able to get later, but you're going to get value at wide receivers. We saw Brian Thomas Jr., who finished 4th in fantasy points this year, who was a 9th round pick. So top 5 wide receivers, who are they going to be? Who can they be? Is there guys that are going to emerge? Guys like Lad McConkey. What's going to happen next year? Rookies coming in. How's that going to play? So we're going to talk about everything here on this channel. If you're new to the channel, smash it, tap it, slap it. I'm giving away advice here that's actually going to help you win. Truth to sports, everything you need under one roof here on the Fantasy Football Council podcast. Now I'm out here waiting for my kids. I pick them up sometimes after school. So I'm like, why not record on the go? We have the amazing time to be alive right now. We have the technology to be able to record from our vehicles. 4K phone recording. I don't think I recorded this in 4K. I should have had it set to 4K. I think we're 1080p. But either way, great quality, decent sound here with my Bluetooth mic. Why not talk fantasy football while I'm waiting here in the blistering cold, -8 degrees. It's cold, man. It's cold. So I'm in the Northeast for all those people wondering. So anyway, the goal is to move down south eventually. Is going to happen soon enough. So that's a whole other topic. But let's talk about these top 5 receivers. Again, hit the thumbs up. Let me know who should be in the top 5, who should be out of it, because copying and pasting doesn't work. So I'll give you a quick example. Last year, CeeDee Lamb, was the number 1 wide receiver across the board. I'm like, don't draft CeeDee Lamb. He's good, but he's coming off a pinnacle year. He went from 403 fantasy points to a big drop to 263 PPR fantasy points. That is a significant drop when you're looking at a wide receiver. So when I look at a guy like CeeDee Lamb, I'm like, particularly going into this year, I was like, dude, 403 fantasy points. That is so hard to duplicate to go, 2 years in a row on top. You know how hard that is to duplicate? So I'm like, I faded him. Clear cut fade. And then you have a couple other guys this year that are on top. Will they finish on top? So let's talk about who basically let's go back to last year, okay? A couple guys last year that, crapped the bed that should have done well. So let's talk about it. So A.J. Brown was a top 10 wide receiver, crapped the bed, finished 16th. Puka was a top dog, finished 21st. Tyreek was a top 4 or 5 pick, finished 18th. Nico Collins was a 3rd round pick, finished 26th. Marvin Harrison Jr. was an early 2nd round pick, finished 34th. I mean, these are guys that were high draft capital picks. Deebo Samuel crapped the bed, right? Brandon Ayuk with 3rd round picks. I said, do not draft these guys. Deebo Samuel is not that good. Now people are like, oh, well, Deebo Samuel's not that good. It's always about thinking forward. Don't always look at what the now is or what happened last year or whatever, because it's going to change. So let's take a look at the top wide receivers, from this past year. Jamar Chase at number 1, Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Brian Thomas Jr., and Drake London were top 5 receivers. Now, in theory, what's going to happen is, according to the Conchitas, they're just going to go ahead and put Jamar Chase at 1, Jefferson at 2, yada, yada, yada. Now, I think Jamar Chase is great. I think he's a great receiver. Would I draft him as the 1st overall pick or a top 3 pick? No. Coming off a pinnacle year, take a look at this, okay? His rookie season, he had 1,400 receiving yards. His past season, 1,600 plus, okay? Even his rookie season, he had a great season, didn't top the numbers that he had this year. He had pinnacle numbers, 16 touchdowns, 1,600 yards, 161 targets, 377 fantasy points. Amazing numbers from Jamar Chase. Is he going to duplicate that again? Highly doubt it. This is the thing, guys, you got to factor in regression whenever and every time you guys look at any wide receiver or any player, you got to factor in a regression. And that's what the Kaships don't do. They just do copy and paste. So a guy like Jamar Chase, I love the talent. I love the upside. I love, this year they didn't make the playoffs. I'm like, okay, well, maybe next year they're going to be hungrier. Maybe him and Burrow are finally good to go. But they've had a history. Burrow's got a history of injuries. Is he going to hurt next year? Is that going to affect Jamar Chase? It's just so many variables happen where things change. Now, you are getting a little more consistency with wide receiver in regards to performing better multiple years in a row, whereas running back, you get a little more volatility and very unlikelihood of them repeating it 2 years in a row. So I think Jamar Chase and Jefferson could they're still young, they're dynamic, they're amazing talent. They've got good quarterback situations, which again, I'm surprised that Jefferson did as good as he did under the circumstances of Darnold, but he played for his career and he did well. Props to him. I think those guys should be in the top 5, but I personally not drafted. Again, you know me, I like to go running backs. Now, other guys, then it gets really dicey, right? Does Malik Neighbors, crack the top 5 this year, even the top 10? I think so. His targets were amazing, right? Number 2 in targets was Malik Neighbors. And the Giants were a bad team, and he was a rookie. So there's no way but up. But that being said, we saw Jamar Chase have a good rookie year, and he fell off. But again, due to injuries and other circumstances, right? Sometimes they come in, and then they do really well, and they have a sophomore slump. But Malik Neighbors could easily be a top 5 wide receiver this year. We saw it in the targets. Like I said, number 2 in targets. And then you look at CeeDee Lamb, who finished 8th in fantasy points, a big drop-off, 7 spots from last year. The CeeDee Lamb cracked the top 10 again. Dak Prescott got hurt. That offense looked bad. If they improve the low line, if it was pretty low this year, if they improve the O-line and draft Ashton Genty this year, they got a true running back. It's going to key the defenses in more on the run game. They didn't have a running back this year. I don't know what the Cowboys were thinking. Maybe they were waiting for Genty, but you get Genty, you get improved O-line, open things up for CeeDee Lamb, a healthy Dak Prescott. You got CeeDee Lamb in the top 3 amongst wide receivers in fantasy performance, right? But if I can get him as a value this year in the second round, that'd be good value for CeeDee Lamb, who has dropped off a little bit from the radar, right? And then you got like Drake London. How is he going to do with Michael Penix? Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's going to stay consistent. But if they have a Super Bowl hangover, if they make it to the Super Bowl and then win or lose, teams tend to drop off after that because they have their hurrah. There's a lot of energy spent. They hit such a pinnacle, very, very hard to duplicate. So again, a lot of variables. So who are the top 5 wide receivers? It doesn't matter to me. To me, what matters is that I get the value later, right? This year, I was able to get Brian Thomas Jr. in the 9th round. I wasted a pick on Keon Coleman. I thought he would have done better, didn't. I still had Ladd McConkey, and I said, just draft 3 of these wide receivers later because they're in a position to succeed. 1 or 2 of them are going to crush it for you. It was that simple. As long as you anchored your team with running backs early and had Josh Allen as your quarterback, you were going to crush it. That's what I was teaching in 16 rounds, right? 16-round draft solution is the game changer. I don't just help you guys draft based on rankings. Consensus rankings don't help you win. So again, it doesn't matter to me who the top 5 are because I'm not drafting any of them. Okay, now, if I feel like I may want to get a safe guy, I would look at Chase, but you got to factor in regression, like I said. Amon-Ra is safe. Brian Thomas Jr., I liked him better last year. Just same thing with Laporta 2 years ago. Everybody was sleeping on Laporta, 16-rounders. Everyone listened to me, got Laporta in the 10th round, 9th, 10th round. He crushed it the year after. Laporta was second round this past year, and then he busted. So is that to say that Brian Thomas Jr. is going to bust? Not necessarily, but I don't like paying a premium for guys that I saw the year before and got him in the 10th round. I'm moving on to the next thing. We always move on to the next thing, and it's a pattern, guys. Everything success is pattern. It's patterns, right? You got to see what happened last year and learn from your mistakes. At the consensus, the Kashifs and every other podcast is telling you to draft based on ADP, on a cookie cutter rankings, and based on last year. That's not going to help you guys win. You got to understand this. I cannot emphasize it enough, and I cannot express enough, and I can't scream off the top of my lungs enough that that's not how you're going to win your leagues. And more proof and more people are waking up to the fact that 16 rounds is the truth. So again, let's talk about some potential top 5. I think Jamar Chase, Jefferson. I think Malik Neighbors cracks the top 5 next year. I think CeeDee Lamb gets back into the top 5. Brian Thomas Jr., very, very possible. And even like a Marvin Harrison Jr., but I just don't like Kyler Murray. I don't think Kyler Murray is that good. If Marvin Harrison Jr. had a good quarterback, even a Sam Darnold throwing to him, he'd do well. I think if he's in the same situation with the same quarterback, I don't think Marvin Harrison is going to get as much traction as he deserves or should get. Could Ladd McConkey crack the top 5? Very possible, but we did see an emergence a little bit more from Quentin Johnson stepping up. Are they going to bring in another wide receiver? What's going to happen there? But there's a good rapport down that stretch for Ladd McConkey. It's been really good for him down that stretch, so I think he takes a step up. I think he finished around 12th this year. Other guys like Puka, that's another guy that could be in the top 5 next year with Cooper Kupp kind of fading off. But again, are you comfortable with, with a Matt Stafford at the tail end of his career? But I think Puka's great talent as long as he stays healthy. So Puka could slide back in there. A.J. Brown could get back in the top 5. Again, a lot of this is predicated on how these guys do in the playoffs. And do they get hurt in the playoffs? Do they regress? Do they have a Super Bowl hangover? Are they going to be tired? What's going to happen in the offseason? How's the O-line going to improve? And again, when I lay out 60 rounds, I look at the NFL draft and how the depth charts fizzle out. So Top 5 wide receivers, we don't know. We're not going to just copy and paste and give you, oh, okay, Chase, Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Brian Thomas Jr., Drake London. That's not what I'm telling you. I'm not going to just sit there and just copy and paste, but I will tell you that yes, Chase and Jefferson could do it again. Yes, CeeDee Lamb could slide back in there. Yes, Brian Thomas Jr. could. Malik Neighbors could step up and step into there. Puka could get in there and other guys. And then maybe some of these rookies come in, depending on their landing spot, could be top guys, okay? But I'm not just going to tell you, oh, copy and paste, because you got to factor in regression. You got to think outside the box, and you got to do your own research, right? You got to do research. You got to be diving into that. And the 16 rounds has all the answers, which I'll be releasing in about a month or so. You can pre-order 16 rounds for 2025. Listen, I don't hold off on the content. Now, what happens is, fantasy's over. We focus on the playoffs here, so make sure you guys subscribe, turn on the bell. But we also start diving into conversations like this as we start looking and projecting forward into next year. Fantasy doesn't end. It is a year-round thing. We have a little bit of a slowdown, I would say, after the Super Bowl up until, I would say, April, end of April, and then the draft happens, and then boom, it starts picking back up into gear full force. And we go hardcore like July, August, September, right? And then the season goes. But it goes fast, it goes hard. So make sure you guys are glued here to this channel. Turn on the thumbs up, the bell, and drop a comment below who's going to be in the top 5. This is more of an open discussion. I'm not going to copy and paste rankings, but I will lay it out in 16 rounds on who to draft to get. You got to get wide receiver value later. That's the secret, guys. Robust RB early on those running backs. There's committees everywhere, and then get that wide receiver value, which 60 rounds offered. You got your Lives, you got your Brian Thomas Jr.'s and Malik Neighbors for better value. Now, Malik was a little more expensive, but the other guys, Brian Thomas and Ladd, that really, really stepped up, and they're going to be higher and more expensive this year, but we're going to be looking for the future this upcoming year, or guys that are going to come up, right? Or guys that didn't do well this year that are going to step up. Maybe Nico Collins has an amazing year next year because, he was injured this year, and, there's a lot of pressure on CJ Stroud to do better because he had a bad season, right? So I think Nico takes a step up, but am I paying a first round for Nico? I think that's where he's going to go. I don't think I'll do it, but it's about thinking forward, guys, projecting, but wanted to get some early rankings for you, and it's never too early to talk about fantasy football. So I can't even talk. So excited, fantasy. Subscribe, thumbs up, and drop it below. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are in regards to wide receivers. Are you going wide receiver, or are you going to be looking at the running back position earlier on again, like I suggest the 16 rounds, okay? Smash it, tap it, slap it. We'll talk in the next video, and I'm going to keep the conversations rolling here for you. If you love fantasy football, all I ask is that you subscribe. We'll talk soon.